Most organizations stop investigating at the exact moment the explanation becomes useful. They reach a sentence that feels like satisfying and they stop. Someone clicked, someone approved something they shouldn't have, or just a human error. Here is what I'm going to argue in a minute precisely. The click wasn't the cause, it was the moment the failure became visible. Quick clarification before we go any further. When I say cause, I'm not denying proximate causality. The click is obviously part of what happened. What I mean is that behavior is rarely a useful explanation for recurrence. Behavior is often the last visible step in the chain, but it's rarely the deep explanation for why the same type of failure keeps returning. So today we're talking about causes that give you leverage, not causes that merely give you closure. Welcome to the Root Cause Podcast. I am Timur Suslov, and here we talk about behavioral security. Today's topic is simple. Why does security keep treating behavior as a root cause? And what changes when we treat behavior as the endpoint of deeper conditions? Here is a story you've seen before. An email arrives, it looks legitimate. Someone clicks, credential gets used, something bad happens. When the ritual begins, incident response, a post-mortem, and a slide deck. The timeline gets written, the lesson gets summarized, and the story collapses into one sentence. It happened because someone clicked. The fix is usually human-focused. More training, more warnings, more reminders. Sometimes blame masked as accountability. That story feels clean. It has perpetrator and it has closure. It feels actionable. But it has a flaw. If you replace that person with another competent person in the same role, with the same workload, on the same pressures, using the same tools, the same type of failure is still likely. Not guaranteed, not deterministic, but likely. Unlikely is the point, because it means the behavior is not a deep explanation. It's the moment the system made its hidden constraints obvious. If you're listening to this, you probably don't want comfort. You want control. You want to reduce recurrence in a system that's messy, pressured, political, and sometimes adversarial. You want explanation that give you leverage, not explanation that simply let you close the ticket. That's the difference between a story that ends and a model that keeps working. So let's define the space. Here is the definition I'm working with. Behavioral security studies how the setup around the asset shapes behavior that changes security risk. When I say setup, I mean the way the work is arranged around an asset. I mean how roles are defined, how workflows move, how interfaces shape decisions, how incentives pull people, and how friction and pressure change what becomes normal. This isn't advanced awareness training. This is not personality scoring, and it's not blaming users. It's a discipline about explanation and about whether controls remain reliable under real conditions. So why does the incident narrative stop at behavior? Because behavior is visible, it's easy to point to, easy to describe, and easy to report. Because behavior creates a neat moral. It gives you a simple message, like be more careful, and the story feels complete. And because behavioral level explanations are cheap and defensible, they fit slides, they fit reporting, and they don't force redesign. If the cause is a person, the system can remain fundamentally sound. Only the person needs fixing. I'm not saying people sit in rooms and conspire to do this. I'm saying systems drift towards explanations that are narratively tidy, organizationally convenient, especially under time pressure and political pressure. Here is the flip. Behavior is where failure becomes visible. The deeper cause of recurrence sits upstream, in repeatable conditions around the asset that shape what people do under pressure. This is the stance I'll keep coming back to. Architecture before blame. Not because individuals don't matter, but because blaming the endpoint doesn't explain the pattern. And if you can't explain the pattern, you can't control the recurrence. Here is a blunt way to put it. If your explanation ends with behavior, you're not managing risk, you're managing accountability theater. You're managing who can be blamed, trained, or warned, instead of managing what will keep recurring. A mission-focused security strategy can't live there. Let's make this concrete with one simple, consistent example. Two competent people, same role, same deadlines, same tools. The secure path takes 5 minutes and requires a ticket. The insecure path takes 10 seconds and nobody complains. The secure path adds friction at the exact moment the person is under pressure. The insecure path removes friction at the exact moment this person is under pressure. Now ask yourself what the system selects for, not what it claims to value in policy, what it rewards in reality. Under pressure, people choose the path that keeps the work moving. That isn't character flaw. It's a predictable response to constraints. So when the same failure class repeats, it tells you something uncomfortable but useful. The environment is producing the behavior. Behavior is the surface symptom of a deeper structure. And notice what changed in our question. The question isn't why did we do it? The question becomes what made the behavior the easy default. That shift is the beginning of behavioral security as a discipline. It turns the story away from the blame towards design. Not because blame is morally wrong, but because it's strategically low leverage. In psychology and social science, this is an old idea. Kurt Levin's field theory is often summarized as behavior is a function of person and the environment. You don't need to treat that as a magical equation. Treat it as a reminder. If the environment keeps selecting for the same shortcut, you can swap people forever and keep getting the same class of outcome. That's why behavior is a weak explanation of recurrence. Let me define architecture in plain language, because this matters. When I say architecture, I'm not talking about technical diagrams. I'm talking about the arrangement of conditions around the asset. It's the way the work is structured so that certain actions become easy, certain actions become costly, and certain actions become normal under pressure. It's what silently teaches people what gets rewarded, what gets punished, and what is safe to do when nobody's watching. That's why I say architecture before blame. It's not a moral statement. It's a causal statement. Now, a fair skeptic will say, isn't this just human factors or safety thinking imported into security? The ingredients overlap, yes, but behavioral security is security native in what it focuses on and what it tries to protect. It starts with assets and controls, and it asks why security controls fail when they collide with real work, real incentives, and real pressure. Security also has its own twist. Security operates under adversarial uncertainty, and you rarely get to prove prevention. So organizations feel pressure to demonstrate visible assurance. That pressure creates drift towards controls that look strong and report neatly, even if they fail when the system is stressed. Behavioral security treats the drift as part of the problem. It's about control, reliability, not comfort narratives. Now I'm going to give you 3 tests, not a checklist, not an operational method. First, ask what happens if you swap the person. If you replace one individual and the same failure class still plausibly recurs when behavior is not your deep explanation. Second, ask whether your explanation gives you leverage without requiring perfect humans. If your fix only works with flawless behavior, it isn't control, it's a wish. Third, ask whether you can explain why the action made sense at the time, not why it was wrong in hindsight, but why it was locally rational under those constraints. If you can't explain the local rationality, you can't design against recurrence. So what changes when you stop ending the story at behavior? You stop spending most of your energy on sermons. You stop endlessly polishing the message and start interrogating the condition. You stop treating recurrence like a personal failure and start treating it like a control reliability problem. You start asking questions that actually touch the upstream layer. You ask where friction sits and why it sits there. You ask where incentives are misaligned and what the system selects for under pressure. This is where mission-focused security becomes real, because your mission isn't reduce clicks, your mission is reduce recurrence, and recurrence lives upstream. There is a trade-off, which is a sign we are dealing with reality. You lose tidy narratives, you lose easy KPIs, you lose the comfort of thinking policy equals practice, but you gain leverage. And if you're mission-focused, leverage beats comfort every time. Let me leave you with 3 questions you can use immediately in post-mortems, planning, and uncomfortable meetings. What in this setup made the insecure action the easy default? What pressure made the secure action expensive? What would have to be true for this failure class to stop recurring? If your incident narrative can't answer those, you don't have the explanation. You have stopping point. Now a name. Why is this podcast called The Root Cause? Because in security, behavior is often treated as the root cause. In this podcast, root cause means something else. It means the deeper, repeatable conditions inside the setup around the asset. The layer which shapes recurrence deeper than behavior. Behavior is the surface. Root cause is the structure that keeps producing the surface. This is the end of episode 1. Thank you for listening.